I want to rapidly, actually, because change is a very complex topic, give an overview of where we're going and what we're doing in relation to the issue to do with managing change in complex systems. Okay. Of course, this webinar, this activity is under a European project called MASCA, which stands for Managing System Change in Aviation. Right? And the main object of MASCA is to develop and support an organizational capability to manage change in a sustainable manner. Right? And one of the things we're doing within it is supporting a number of parallel case studies of actual operational change. Right? Down at the bottom there, you'll see the logos of all the partners of the MASCA project. Right? The reason for doing a project like MASCA is that if you look at the literature, without being too cynical about it, only a minority of major change initiatives have a positive outcome. And the failure rate of information technology projects can be as high as 60 or 70%. Okay, it depends on the criteria that you use and so on, but no matter what the figures are, change is high failure, not a great guarantee of success. From our own research and background over the last number of decades, we've got plenty of case studies of the difficulty of change. One study that was really influential in the development of our thinking was when we were working with SAS, and they had a major accident in 1990 or 1991, and we were given the opportunity to ask the following questions. When was the problem first identified? And then why was what was done not sufficient to prevent the next incident? So we tracked a number of similar incidents through the company and came to this rather serious, rather disturbing conclusion that it takes about 3 or 4 serious incidents before an operationally effective solution is found. Now bear in mind, this is in a company with a really top-notch reputation for safety and a high commitment to doing so, and that was why they were so open about it, right? So change is difficult. A local company here in Dublin that we worked with for many, many years, right? We worked along them with many improvement initiatives that had little success. I'll talk about one shortly that was very successful. But you know, if you look at the quality system, and again this is typical of a lot of quality systems, you know, the handover of recommendations is where the process finished effectively. It's too complicated to actually follow up the implementation of recommendations for improvement. A people partnership and improvement program was to develop better, strong performance and reinforce to change the industrial relations. It was successful for a while, but it was overtaken by new sort of crisis in the company. AMPOS was an improvement project, a European improvement project, and quite frankly, we got through, you know, sort of the analysis and the improvement recommendations phases, but it was very difficult to move things on into implementation, let alone evaluation. Formula One was a project they had to make a perfect check process, but doing that sucked in all the resources from elsewhere in the company, so it really didn't work. So there's many, many improvement initiatives that don't really work very well. In the airport collaborative decision-making project we're working with in Sweden, this is a big European, part of a big European initiative. So far there have been 6 successful implementations, but there are about 30, 35 airports en route to this. So it's really critical that this be made a successful intervention, not only in Sweden, but across these different airports. Why is change so difficult? Well, certainly in the domain that we're working in, change in the human, social, and organizational aspects is difficult because it's not just taking a piece of technology offline and fixing it and replacing it. Many aspects have to change at once, and that change has to happen at the same time as the operation continues to function. Right? So it's training, it's procedures, it's the structure of the organization, it's implementing new IT systems. So many things go on at the same time. And as I've said, each stage of the change cycle is more difficult. People at the beginning think reporting is difficult, but actually analyzing and not jumping to conclusions and getting a serious solution is even more difficult. Getting an effective handover of recommendations to those responsible for implementing it is more difficult still. Implementing it is yet more difficult, and evaluation is so difficult that it very rarely happens indeed. Okay. A lot of our work right from the beginning has focused very strongly on the informal practices that keep the system going. So much so that we coined this phrase, well-intentioned people in dysfunctional organizations, that it is people who, despite the sort of lack of having adequate support or all the resources they need, people make the system work, right? And there's a kind of classic anecdote that we always used to be coming across. Why do the best guys make the worst errors? Because the best guys are the people who are making the finest compromises between what is necessary to be done to get the job done, to make the system work, and cutting just the right corners in order to do so. Very occasionally they get caught out, and so you get this paradox. So with informal practices, what really happens is hidden, especially when something goes wrong. So you get these cycles of stability with a lot of organizational effort going into dealing with events and problems, but the system remains the same. So in organizations, there's often what is a veneer of apparent consensus, right? That people agree and share understanding only enough to support the existing collaboration. Right? This understanding is only partially shared. It's tacit, it's informal, it's based around unofficial knowledge of how things work, right? And many initiatives for change are dissipated by an inability to understand. There are 10 other callers on the call. Inability to understand or influence the real way of working, right? And this is linked with relatively weak organizational change processes that can really follow through an initiative and ensure that it delivers an outcome. And of course, in a situation like this, relative mistrust is exacerbated when people see local interests are threatened. And trust is really important here because it takes a long time to develop trust. It can be dissipated in a very short time, but a lack of trust conditions everyone's expectation for what is going to happen in the future. So it's a real multiplier for the potential for change in the future. So paradoxically, our argument is that if you look at culture and stability, and culture has a lot to do with change, culture is a force for stability precisely because of this kind of dynamic inertia produced by partially shared understanding and values. Right? And to reinforce this notion that because such values are largely tacit and implicit and taken for granted in a stable situation, you know, when you really need to know what's going on, it's very difficult to sort of dig deep underneath and to understand how the system really works. And interestingly, this is true for people not just like myself who come in from outside and try and understand it, but it's also true for people who have many, many years of experience in working in technological environments. It's also important to recognize that change rarely occurs in ideal circumstances. There's usually a lack of time, lack of resources. There are often competing priorities and interests. There's also tension and conflict, potentially, between people whose interests do diverge or apparently diverge. Right? So a lot of the literature on change suggests that it's quite opportunistic. It needs this happy confluence of the right people at the right time in the right place. It's subject to full starts, diversions, and revisions. Right? One key quote is, "You should never miss the opportunity of a good crisis." This creates the opportunity to do something new. People will maybe accept that things need to change. But another aspect of that is don't leave it too late so that the crisis is so severe that it can't be recovered. Right? But I think where we're coming from in MASCA, in the project, and trying to develop and support companies, is that if you're going to seize the opportunity when it arises, you need to have the capability to do so. You need to be able to have the people with the right experience and background, right, with the right background and resources in order to seize that opportunity. And I think that's a lot of what we are trying to put into place in our approach to change management. Last week I was talking about the system and sense-making and culture and performance. Right? And one of the reasons of talking about that is the idea that if you design certain interventions, you can only directly change a couple of things about organizational systems. You can change the system, you can change the process or procedure, you can change the information system, right? The structure of a team, introduce new technology, right? You can also change the way in which people make sense of or understand or their knowledge or competence about the process through training, education, and communication. But what one is seeking to achieve is an indirect effect of these so that the system performs differently through the actions of people, and that this new understanding is embedded in culture, right? Creating a new stability of the future system. But so acting on the system and sense-making, right, through is what we can do, but what we're trying to achieve is the knock-on indirect effects on performance and culture. From a theoretical point of view, this is an enormous challenge. Looking at the way in which theories of change have themselves changed over the last decades, is the credibility of theories of plan change have gone down. And they've been giving way to theories of change as an emergent process. For example, those of Andrew Pettigrew, for example. And such theories suggest that you need to take into account the these difficult processes within organizations that that support and hinder change. Right? But for many people, emergence means it's difficult to control or to understand them as part of a causal theory. Right? On the other hand, if you really think about what emergence means in a technical sense, maybe it's more closely related to the idea that change depends upon a whole lot of highly distributed local interactions. Right? And the question is, how do you get leverage over those? How do you influence those? Right? A similar debate is around resistance to change. Change is often met by what appears like resistance. Right? For management, often this seems something that needs to be overcome, and they don't understand why, from something that seems obvious from their point of view, is not shared by everyone. But the challenge, in our view of culture, is not only to understand how different people understand the situation they're in and the challenges that they're confronted with, but to find a way to influence that understanding in a more productive way. Another problem for theories of planned change is the notion that you can anticipate the outcome at the beginning of the process. Right? In fact, the false starts of change are maybe absolutely necessary in order to clarify really what you need to do in order to achieve successful change. So if the first action is wrong, it creates the conditions for understanding what the right action is and doing it right, not the first time, but the second or third time. And an even more sort of tricky sort of concept is that it's only when you reach the end of your change initiative that you really understand what was necessary in order to get there. It's often very difficult to anticipate this right at the beginning. Right? So if we're going to be successful in supporting change initiatives, I think we need to understand some of these dynamics of change in complex systems. One author who's written about change put down what seemed like a sort of fairly ironic set of criteria for successful change. Ironic because in her experience, these criteria are very rarely achieved. But I think they provide a very good kind of challenge to us in designing our approaches to change. Right? There are three criteria. Right? The first one is that it's necessary to understand what needs to change. Right? And for us, this is very much about thinking about how the process functions. How the process functions and delivers its outcome in the current system, and what needs to change in that process functionality to deliver a future system that works better and delivers what needs to be done in order to meet the organization's challenges. So from a theoretical point of view, do you have the right knowledge? Is your knowledge and understanding relevant to solving the problems of the way in which the system functions? Okay. Secondly, it's necessary to have, if not consensus for change, at least the power to impose change. But for many of the processes that we're concerned with, people are critical to the operation of the process. So some level of consensus is probably absolutely vital. But of course, it's also in the context of existing power relations. Right? So power gives the opportunity to take the initiative, to impose change to some extent, but it is always limited by the degree of consensus about what is acceptable. And people can always make it difficult to implement change if they do not feel in any way that this is in their interest or what they want to do. So this is the motive force criterion. Does everyone want to change? Right? But those two conditions give rise to a third one, which is around the capability of changing what needs to change, right? While maintaining everything else stable, so that actually you are able to implement an effective outcome. And this is a third criterion. Can you actually bring about change? Right? So this is a good challenge for us in the change business to see, can we actually meet those three criteria? As I've said, the key avenues of leverage that we have in relation to socio-technical systems are in how people make sense of the situation through the kind of initiatives and learning, training, communication, as well as in collaborative and participative activity where people can be exposed to and learn from others and learn how things can be done differently. So within this, knowledge is a core framework of leverage, right? Changing understanding of values. The system Okay, the technical operational processes, the social institutions, the normative patterns of behavior and action. Right? What can be changed are rules and procedures, technologies and information systems, the social structure. But what's critical in all those changes is data about how the system works, and translating that into information and knowledge as a core framework for actually leveraging that system change. So for us, actually, if you want to answer the third question, right, do you have the capability to change? It's not all about information and knowledge, but if you can exert influence through information and knowledge about the system, that goes some way towards providing the basis for leveraging change. Last week, I introduced this basic model of how socio-technical systems work. Right? And a change process, I think, needs to be regarded in terms of how these different elements work together to produce an effective change process that goes through decision points to deliver the goals and objectives of the overall change initiative. Even though I've said that change often has stops and starts and is rarely continuous in a smooth way, I think it's important to, when looking at it and supporting it, is to see it as something that begins with a strategy, continues with planning and preparation into an implementation phase and through to evaluation of how it works. Right? So to apply a functional logic to change initiatives. But it's particularly in relation to the functional process, the social relations, and the information and knowledge processes that give the opportunity to actually implement a program to support change. And I just want to quickly review some of the issues that we discussed last time. The process, the functional process itself, delivers transactional value of actually transforming resources into an output that provide a product or service. Right? It's about sequential relationships in real time, right? That and the key thing to do is to reduce the uncertainty in the delivery of that output. On the other hand, social relationships give enduring value of sustaining that value creation over time, right? Through the coordination of people, and it's people's coordination that make that system work. And such relationships are reciprocal and develop slowly over time. Right? And their key functional characteristics are around social cohesion, the kind of structural integration of that group or team, and the level of trust between people. Right? Between those, if those are out of kilter, knowledge and information give the possibility of change through transforming meaning from data into knowledge, from tacit knowledge into explicit and back into tacit knowledge again, validated through feedback, linking past, present, and future, and through developing a common understanding of what the system is doing and what other people believe about it. Right? That's the kind of mechanics that we want to work with. So the idea is that there is a tension between the functional and the social. Social relationships make the process possible, but such relationships are mutual, evolve more slowly, right? And so there's often a gap between what the new process requires and what existing social relationships deliver, leading to a lack of shared understanding, cultural divergences, different practices, different expectations, and a need for learning. And the role of knowledge and information is to bridge that gap, right? to move knowledge around, to validate it, to ensure that it's effective and commonly understood and actually realistic. Right? So there are two cycles for doing this. Right? One is around the shared informal knowledge, making that explicit, changing that through learning to support new practice, and seeing as this again gradually becomes in turn tacit and informal again, hopefully in a new improved process. Part of this is a shift from local understandings to a more global understanding. The cycle around data, information and knowledge is around the data that is produced by the process, converted into information that gives knowledge about how the process is functioning. It addresses uncertainty about inputs and outputs and tells us how the process is performing and helps us to manage risk. So those are the ideas behind this. Let me just quickly talk about 4 different case studies of change, right, and see how these ideas maybe apply. I'm going to run through these very rapidly. The first is around the shared management of risk and improvement between a maintenance repair organization and an airline. The second is about the implementation of airport collaborative decision-making at an airport. Third is about safety performance management at an airline. And the fourth one is about an overall performance management concept at a small regional airport. Marie Ward was one of the main authors and participants in this change case study in SR Technics. Right? It was built around a team, a change team of people on the ground whose responsibility it was to coordinate the team under the direction and support of management, and a new link in terms of openness between the management and the operation. It was based upon a collaborative mapping of processes, of the real process that happens, and that mapping led to a new form, a blocker report, to identify problems in the process. It started with simple, controllable initiatives, linking up with a lean initiative for better housekeeping, but then actually identifying more complex problems that needed to be solved, both in the hangar and with local management, and also even more complex problems that needed to be solved at a group level, so escalating those up. Right? A transparent process of progress in problem solving, and so everyone could see where they were. And this was really important in creating a new open relationship in sharing data between the airline and the maintenance company. The overall outcome was actually a very successful collaborative project. There was information about problems, collaborative mapping and understanding, reporting of blockers, and the vast majority of those blockers were actually solved. Right? For the airline, this created an outcome where actually they felt they were managing the risk, or collaborating and managing the risk, whereas they'd just been carrying the risk that the maintenance company was managing before. Right? For the maintenance company, they were highly profitable checks, they earned a bonus, and there were few operational problems in them. Staff had less frustration, their problems were being solved. And for management, there's a massive increase in credibility following the success of the improvement process. The airline case study, developing a safety performance system in SAS. The big focus here is on making the whole company work together between flight operations, technical operations, ground operations, and aviation security. Right? Instead of data silos, creating an integration. And one of the chief mechanisms for this was identifying safety performance indicators and collecting and gathering them from different parts of the organization in a new software system called Vision Monitor, which delivered, as you can see on the right here, a schematic overview of the current risks in which the operation faced. This data integration and analysis supported a new organizational structure, the Flight Safety Quality Board, right, who at the top level, his job was to manage those safety performance indicators and manage risk, how risk was managed in it, and down to local safety advisory groups. And so there was an effective organizational structure and process for dealing with it. Right? A large sort of part of the initiative at the minute is to link safety into the major change initiatives in the company, in particular lean improvement initiatives, so that safety becomes a partner in the change process itself, delivering effective outcomes to the company as it goes through its difficult process of transformation. And part of this is developing a process that goes through a sequence of delivering effective outcomes. This is in train at the minute. The third case study is about an overall performance management concept in a regional airport. Regional airports have a difficult future, right? Either they grow or they die, right? They're under a lot of commercial pressure to create a sustainable framework. Right? So this particular project was designed to implement a much more integrated performance management concept in which people seriously understand what they need to do, follow the procedure in a better way, report problems, and again, it was built around around an initial phase of process mapping linked to reporting of problems, and integrating those reports into a common system, right, to give a performance appraisal at the system level, enabling the management and staff working together to deal with problems that are confronted on a day-to-day level. Right? Overcoming a lack of trust between the previous way of working and traditional ways of doing things is a major issue in this initiative. Right? Overcoming this, creating a common understanding of the way forward in managing risk was seen to be a key initiative. And again, this is in the middle of the transition phase into a full implementation of the program, based upon process modeling, leading into a daily journal for all staff. What do you have to do? They're given a software supported system for identifying the tasks they need to do in this particular shift. That then generates an anomalies report. They can report problems that they're confronted with. It's linked into also a hazard identification. So part of the process is to develop a comprehensive, transparent way of supporting people's normal performance at work to deliver more effective outcomes. It's not going to do everything to change the future of the airport, but actually improve performance, reducing risks of unintended consequence is actually quite critical to ensuring the future of this airport. At Arlanda Airport, we're working to support Swedavia in implementing airport collaborative decision-making. Collaborative decision-making is critical to the future of single European sky, with vastly increased traffic being projected. And in an airport like Arlanda and many other airports, it requires collaboration between many different independent companies in the turnaround. I'm not going to talk about that, it's too complicated. But just to give you a kind of flavor of some of the issues, if you map a process, if you look down the central turnaround process for an aircraft, decision to land, aircraft at the gate, aircraft disembarked, ready for pushback, ready for takeoff. That's an aircraft-centric process. But all the other services, like baggage handling, don't go through that whole process. They have a transverse process, right, essentially, of moving from this aircraft over here, delivering bags to the terminal, right, going to the gate for this aircraft, collecting bags, coming back to deliver bags to this aircraft, moving on to the next aircraft, right? So what has to be reconciled is lots of parallel intersecting processes with interdependencies that need to be managed. In order to understand this, our colleagues in NLR have developed a serious game, a board game, to actually understand, you know, and to, as a learning aid, to understand the problems of informal collaboration, and to try and explore and help people to learn that actually a collaborative approach can be much more effective and efficient than just looking after your own interests. One of the interesting things out of this change initiative is that actually airports often have the least leverage over key partners, right? Independent ground handlers don't have a contract with the airport. They do with the airlines, but it's difficult for the airport to actually have influence over them. Right? Where are the key nodes that will deliver a better process? We've been in intense discussion with Swedavia, sort of saying, how can we influence, how can we help them identify how to influence how the future process will go? So what we're hoping will come out of this will be some special enhanced training in the autumn for dispatchers who actually control the process in order to link the critical collaborative decision-making milestones to the game, learning lessons, within a wider learning framework that will link into their implementation planning and delivering an effective outcome by early next year. This gives you some flavor of the different sorts of initiatives that we're involved in. The support that we're providing within the project is of different types. We're providing learning, training, and mentoring. Right? Next year we will be putting on a new master's program, but in the meantime we're providing a range of different learning support to the companies. Serious games to provide a simulation of complex interactions, process modeling, information and software support of different types, an assessment of change capacity, and in the future a framework of qualification and accreditation for managing risk and change. The aim of all of this is, despite the complexity of change, is to build a predictive model based on addressing the following issues. Does the strategy, is it clear, and is it well thought out? Right? Will the future process deliver the benefits required in this strategy? That is, will the functional changes actually change the outcomes in the situation from the system to deliver the outcomes that the competitive challenges of the organization is facing? Do the quality of the social relationships match the demands of the change in the functional process? So how well is the social system set up there to actually support the functional requirements of the process? And depending on that, how well do the knowledge and information systems engage people in making the future system work as planned? Over the coming months, we will be rolling out this evaluation against the different case studies. But ultimately, the model will be validated against success or failure in multiple change initiatives. So accepting the fact that change can be complex, dynamic, opportunistic, specific to particular situations, emergent rather than planned, political, prone to failure, taking a long time often. We want to provide the kind of support that enables change to be coherently strategically driven, systemic, creating a momentum, is collaborative and sustainable, right? And to show how the hard facts of performance improvement can be enabled through supporting and enabling these soft emergent processes involved in trust, understanding, and culture. Right? And ultimately, we want to show how investing in these things and doing these things better delivers a better outcome. Thanks for listening. That's it.
Unmuted.
Any questions? Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions? Any questions?
Okay. The question here on the process of collaborative mapping, right?
Sorry, Nick, can you repeat?
I beg your pardon?
Can you repeat that?
There's a written question here asking you to explain the process of collaborative mapping.
Okay. I'm just going to
Over the
mute
years.
everyone. Just 1 second.
Yeah.
There's a problem.
Okay, thanks. Over the years, we've been developing a methodology for mapping and analyzing processes, which is focused not only on what should happen, but on capturing a very real account of what does happen. In particular, all the informal coordination aspects that people need to do in order to make the system work, rather than just the formal tasks and so on. So often that's quite a time-consuming process, but it is the basis for both understanding, for us understanding what really happens, but even more importantly, if it's done in a collaborative way with all the different people involved in the process, all the relevant people, it creates a common consensus of how the process really functions and creates a very strong basis for actually people to have the confidence to make reports of things that are not going on as well as they should, and to try and stimulate improvement in how the process is really functioning. Does that answer the question?
Unmuted.
Answer the question. Yeah. Okay. Limit to a map or something else. Yeah, maybe to visualize the process of matters. Yes, I can actually show you. In fact, what we will do in, I think, when we circulate this presentation, right, is to include a couple of examples of process maps in different ways. I did give some examples. If you look at last week's presentation that was circulated, there was some examples of a process map, a team diagram, and an information flow diagram. Very simple examples, right?
Darren, I will send you the link to last week's webinar, the full recording.
Yep. Any other questions?
I'm muted.
Okay.
No. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Nick, again. Again, this is recorded, and we'll send you the link to this presentation. And next week, our third webinar is next week, and Nick highlighted his second case study, the Safe Lean Performance Management case study. So next week's webinar will focus on that particular case study and give you a lot more insight into that. So we have no more questions. We finish up for now. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks
Bye.
very much.
Thank you. Bye. Others.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
I'm sorry, I'm late.
You were late. Hi. Good to see you again.
I did. See you again.
How are you? Can you hear me?
Sorry? I can't see you.
Can you hear me?
Is that Professor Sun?
Yeah.
Yes.
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 Professor Sun, hello.
I'm glad to hear you. But
I'm
I'm
very
sorry.
pleased to hear
I
you.
can't see
Yes.
you. Yes.
Great
yes.
to see
I'm
you again.
sorry, I'm late.
That's okay. That's okay. But we must find an opportunity to be in contact again.
Yes, yes. I can see you the PPT.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah. We were.
If possible, send your slide to me.
Yeah, we will
Yes.
indeed.
Read. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we'll talk
We will
again.
do that.
We'll talk again soon, I hope. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
See you.
Bye.